What's going on, guys? In today's video is going to be all about ditch fishing. I really want to clarify what ditch fishing is because there can be a lot of confusion when you hear everyone saying they're in the ditches but you really don't know what to look for. So in today's video we're going to break down a couple ditches on the map so you kind of know what to look for when you're out there on the water. This is a pattern that's really going to pick up in about 2 weeks, carry out the entirety of December and January, and even a little bit into those early spring months like February, March. You can still catch them out of the ditches. So it's definitely something you need to understand and know how to fish if you want to be effective in these next coming months on the water. But like I said, today's video we're going to solely look at the map. I'm going to put in some footage from my Garmin live scope and also me recently ditch fishing over on Lake Martin, so you can kind of get a visual representation as well as see what they actually look like on the map. So today's video is going to be all about that. Hopefully you'll learn a thing or two. Let's jump into it. Alright guys, in this portion of the video I want to take a minute to look at my Humminbird unit right here. This is actually Lake Master mapping card, and this has been the biggest asset for me in the past couple of years, really understanding these ditches and how these fish set up. So let's start out by talking about what is a ditch and what to look out for. So pretty much any creek or cove in the lake is going to be a ditch. What really makes a good ditch is having some steep contours on either side of the map. Like right here, you can see how tightly packed they are on each side, and they kind of bottleneck into this area right here where it gets a little bit shallower in the back. You can see those contours getting a little bit more spaced out right there. And that's pretty much what you're looking for when you are ditch fishing. So a general rule of thumb is in the mornings they're going to be a lot shallower in these ditches, and as that sun keeps progressing through the day, they will actually slide out into that timber and often on the edge of the timber in these ditches. So that's something to consider when you are ditch fishing. So this one right here is just a main lake ditch right there. For example, we can go up the lake a little bit more and you can see here's another prime example. We have the main creek channel running in through here, and once again right there it kind of bottlenecks into that 40 to 50 zone right there and really starts to get shallow right there in that 30 to 40. That'd be a great area to start looking. And a couple things to look out for on the water is if you ever see loons, those can be a great indication of bait. And what I often do is if I see loons, I'll idle over an area, see if there is bait, and a lot of times you won't even be able to see the fish because they'll be so tight packed on the bottom. You're often just looking for bait, and if you spend enough time in there, you'll eventually run into them anywhere from 70 to 80 feet all the way to 20 feet. But like I said, in the mornings it can be really some awesome fishing up shallow in those ditches when that herring is pushed all the way in the back. And then as the day progresses, it's kind of challenging, but you try to follow those fish further out into the ditch, and they often will stop right there on the edge of that timber. Now each ditch varies if it has timber or not, or if the timber starts at 30 feet or 60 feet, and that's kind of your job to just use your down imaging and side imaging to really figure out where that timber edge is and if there is or is not bait present. But definitely if you find the bait this time of year, more times than not there's going to be a lot of fish with it. So in those two examples we kind of touched on a few main lake ditches. Let's go ahead and move into a random creek arm somewhere and just look at a couple creek ditches. Now main lake ditches I often catch a lot bigger fish, and for example we can just go over here and look. This would be a really good prime example of something I'll call a creek ditch, and like we can see again, main river channel running in right here. This one's a really good example where we have those gradual contours right here, and then as you can see on each side right here we have extremely tightly packed contours on either side, kind of forming that main ditch in the middle. And they can be anywhere, like I said, from the very back to out to 100 feet. And that's really your job to kind of intercept them in some area. And another thing I want to touch on that a lot of people overlook is kind of these little indentations on the map inside the actual ditches. As we can see right here, we have two right there. Kind of makes a little bit of an indentation right there, and that's a great pinpoint for these fish to push bait into. And those are often overlooked because most people just go down the middle of it and often there can be some really big schools of fish pushed in areas like this that won't get hit as much as kind of per se those main ditches. But this is a really good example right here of kind of one of those side ditches or indentations. We have the main ditch coming off right here, then it kind of branches off right there, but we still have those tight contours I've been talking about on each side of those. And this is a really good area where those fish will kind of pin those herring and threadfin right there and feed on them. But in the mornings, don't be scared to get as shallow as 10, 15, even less in the back of these places. And a lot of these fish will actually be pushed up on bait early in the morning, and you can catch them on a variety of baits I will talk about. Lastly, let's just go ahead and look at this one right here. This one is a little bit more subtle and something I was kind of talking about with the little indentations. This one would definitely be overlooked by most people because they're running in here, they see the obvious ditch. But if you take your time and you kind of really study your Lake Master or Navonic, C-Map, whatever you have, you can break it down and see that there's a lot of good contours right here, and these fish will often be less pressured. Even right here, this would be another area I would really look at. It's something that would be overlooked. Main Creek channel, and it's pretty hard to see these if you're not paying attention, but right there we have a perfect example of one of those indentation side ditches right there where Main Creek channel, it gets really tight on the contours right there. That's definitely a spot that will be overlooked by most people, but could be worth your time just to see. But hopefully a couple of these examples really helped y'all in the ditch fishing, and in the next video we're going to branch into some of the baits and approaches I do use once I actually figure out when I am in a ditch.